Hi, I'm Tiffany, and this is Towering TBR. Alright, this is my wrap-up for September, part 2. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'll link it in the cards and in the description below. But I've already read 8 books, and I already talked about them, so now we're going to focus on the new books. I had 3 DNFs, 3 5 stars, and 3 that were in the middle. So I'm going to start with the DNFs, and I'll work my way up to the best books. So, unfortunately, the first book I DNF'd was Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley. I was really looking forward to this because I had heard such good things about it. And yeah, the writing style bothered me quite a lot. I only read 30 pages, but in those 30 pages, she had already used so many similes. It felt like she was trying to make her writing lyrical, but to the point where, like, it was just overdone. And yeah, I'll give you a couple of examples of that because I wrote them down on my phone. One is a woman, her eyelashes short ghosts framing her eyes as she stares at the child in her arms. Cole is lengthy, his entire body appearing like you could stretch it all the way to the ceiling if you pulled hard enough. His lips puffing like a pre-tantrum child, like he doesn't want me to leave. So, for me, it was just a personal quirk. I would still recommend it if someone's interested because maybe that wouldn't bother them and then they'd get access to the whole story. So, anyways, that was my first one. My second DNF was the graphic memoir Marzi. I made it just past halfway, and then I had to stop. This is her life story, and it's set up in kind of like vignettes. Like, she talks about like when she first got a dog and when she was signed up for ballet classes and playing with friends. And it was interesting. She grew up in Poland and was about 7 when Chernobyl hit, and they all panicked because the fumes and stuff were going towards them, and they were like, you're not allowed to forage mushrooms, you have to wash all the produce. Like, they were really worried about contamination. And that was interesting. But she goes on to talk about mushroom foraging after this, and it was kind of like, I don't know. I was losing interest, and then the thing that really kind of sealed the deal is there is just so much text. There's basically 2 sentences or paragraphs on each space. And that was really hard to read, especially because I was kind of slogging through it. And I just decided, you know what, this is too long. She should have been more particular with the memories she included, I think. And my last DNF, which really guts me, was my highly anticipated This Beer Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. Oh. So, again, it was a writing style choice. So the book is about a young man who, in his dreams, can travel to the old world, where there were moon goddesses and emperors, and where his grandma, Lola, is from, and he has the memories of his grandma telling him about this place. But then he's also actively participating in the place when he's, like, watching scenes unfold. So it switches between second and third person quite a lot. And I really didn't like that construct. I felt like I wish it had all been in third person and we were figuring out what was going on. I read 120 something pages, and it is like 500 something pages, so. But that's about 25%, and it was just boring. Like, every time he would switch back to second person, it really pulled me out of the story. So, yeah, didn't enjoy this, couldn't keep up with it, so. That was my DNF. So let's go on to books that were more successful. I picked up All the Women in My Brain by Betty Gilpin. This was essays about her life, and when I first heard about this, it was compared to Jenny Lawson. And Jenny Lawson is known for two things: her mental health representation with anxiety and depression, and her wit and weird things that she thinks about that nobody else sits and thinks about. And so I was like, all right, let's have some funny, healthy discussions about mental health. But that's not really what we got. It is essays, and some of them are funny. But she really doesn't talk about mental health very much. She mostly talks about her life as an actress. And at times she does talk about her mental health, especially with dealing with rejection. But I felt like she just didn't dig deep enough, or I was just maybe misled about what the book was going to be about. But there were two sections that I found, one amusing and two poignant. So I will read that. A warning if we see a play together. As a patron, I am basically audience Gestapo. I will whisper scream at your mother if she thinks vibrate is silent. People are ripping their hearts open for less than an unemployment paycheck up there. How can you not see that your percussive bangle bracelets are robbing that downstage understudy of the one luxury in their life? 30 seconds of corseted ministry. I don't care if she's a bad actress. Her bio is tiny, and this is her moment. Let her believe it's award-winning. Oh God, I just saw her face, and she can hear the hearing aid in row B. Don't worry, Angel. I'm going to motion to my husband to jab my program in the man's neck. Don't be a coward, honey. This monster has to be punished. Fine, I'll do it myself. So, in that, I kind of can see the comparisons of Jenny Lawson. It was funny. But the one time I felt like she did actually acknowledge her depression, she wrote something that really stuck with me. So I wanted to read that to you as well. Depression offered the option that my life was a disposable joke. That I didn't need to try for things because I didn't care about being alive. Blinking through the shinier one's triumphs felt a little easier with a cyanide pill in my pocket. Congrats on your blue ribbon. I don't need blue ribbons because I might go bye-bye tomorrow. It's almost convenient. Other people are weighed down with self-love and goals. I don't even need protein or safety. You get to treat the house like shit when you're only renting. And yeah, that actually resonated quite a bit. So overall, I gave this collection of essays 3 stars. I won't recommend it to everybody, but I did enjoy it. Then for book club, we picked up the book The Butterfly Garden by Hutchison. And this is a mystery thriller about girls that get kidnapped and turned into butterflies. The gardener, the serial killer who is doing this, is tattooing butterfly wings on their bodies and pretending that they inhabit his garden, which is where he keeps them. That was an interesting premise. I wanted to read more about that. However, the writing is terrible. It's so terrible that it's laughable. But it did keep a quick enough pace that I wanted to find out what happened. I wanted this man to get caught. And so I kept turning the pages. So I will give you, the reasons I felt like the writing was bad. There was so much showing instead of telling. So this is from the FBI guy who is interviewing one of the victims. It says, the moment he could have pushed is gone as quickly as it came, but he makes a mental note of it. He's not naive enough to think that she trusts them. Still, he doesn't think she means to reveal this much emotion. whatever she's hiding, and he agrees with Edison, the laughably bad cop sidekick. She's hiding something important. She's so focused on it that other things are starting to slip. So the police felt very much caricatures, and they treated this victim like she was possibly culpable. And they excuse it by saying, oh, well, we're used to interviewing the perps, not the victims. And it was just like, well, then go back to perps because you're terrible at dealing with victims. There are a bunch of trigger warnings in this, but sexual assault is the main reason he captures these women. And when they're interviewing one of the victims, she talks about her first sexual assault experience as she tried to disassociate from her body and recite poetry. And the cops don't ever want to say rape or sexual assault, so they will say, like, how many times did you recite poetry? Like, they really danced around using those words, which I thought was unbelievable in their profession. There was a whole scene where the evil villain tells one of the victims his whole evil plan. So that was just amusing and unrealistic. But let me see. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars because I couldn't put it down, but I made so many notes because it was not a high caliber book. So I guess take that with a grain of salt. And the other book that was in the middle was Abaddon's Gate by James S. A. Corey. This is the 3rd book in the Expanse series. It's a huge chunker too. And basically in this, we have a crew that we've been following since book 1, and they find an alien hypergate, and it's about what the people do about it. And I don't want to say anything more because spoilers, but I will say the reason this is not a 5-star and is only getting 4 stars from me is the conclusion depended on a villain kind of having a change of heart. And I felt like that was an unrealistic linchpin for the conclusion. So yes, just 4 stars. Okay, so let's move on to the 5 stars. I had 3 5 stars. The first was a comic called Breaking Cat News by Georgia Dunn. And I found this on my library app for comics. And yeah, it was just adorable. It was envisioning cats running a news program and what the issues would be of the day and how they would report to other cats. I'll insert some pictures because I thought it was really cute and really funny. And I was feeling really low that day, and so it was nice to just have something fun and cheerful. So I am going to put in all the pictures that I took. The second book that I gave 5 stars was called Everything Sad is Untrue by Daniel Nayeri. This is a memoir that Daniel writes, and it's meant for kids. He tells a story from when he's a boy, and he grew up in Iran, where the state religion is Islam, and if you practice another religion, they can kill you. So his mom is found out to be practicing Christianity, and they put a fatwa on her head, which basically means she could be killed. And instead of ratting out all of the other people who go to her church, she and her children decide to flee, and they live in a refugee camp for a while in Italy, and then they eventually are able to move to Oklahoma. And the way he just tells the story, he talks about it when he was a child, like the teacher would be like, get to the point. And he's like, this is Persian storytelling. We don't always get to the point. We have to weave in all of this other important information. And I love the way he told his story. I will let you know, there's a lot of discussion of poop, which I think will probably appeal to middle grade kids. But even I learned that there are differences between our countries, so that was enlightening as well. But I loved this book, and I cannot believe it hasn't gotten more buzz on BookTube. It's kind of a local hit where I live at the library, but I haven't seen much about it on BookTube. So, highly recommend that. It is middle grade, but I found it really enjoyable as an adult. And the last book that I'm going to talk about was my favorite book of the month, Redshirts by John Scalzi. Oh my gosh, this was so good. Okay, so this is a satire of action, adventure, science fiction shows. And we start out following Ensign Davis. And I knew on page 6 that this book was going to be amazing. When I read this line, Ensign Davis thought, "Screw this, I want to live." And he swerved to avoid the landworms. But then he tripped, and one of the landworms ate his face, and he died anyway. This book was hilarious, and I loved that little nod to Dune with the landworms. That was cute. There's a lot of metatextual information in this book. I also listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Will Wheaton, who was on a show like this. And having that was just like this extra layer of complexity that I was really enjoying. This, oh my gosh, I loved the characters. I loved what was going on. I love the ending. There's 3 endings, so that's interesting. Oh, I will say, as an audiobook, his dialogue does leave a little bit wanting. He uses said so much. So-and-so said, and then she said, and he said, and they said, and I'm like, said is dead. Come on, pick a different one. But that's just a tiny nitpick. I like that they made fun of things on shows and incorporated it into the book. And I want to read this section. It says, "Get us out of here, Kerensky," Abernathy said. Then he turned to King. "Additional damages?" "Deck 12 heavily damaged," King said. The door to the bridge opened and Chief Engineer West came through. "And our engines are banged up pretty good, too," he said, as though he would have been able to hear Abernathy and King's decision, through the door while the red alert sirens were blaring. "We're lucky we didn't crack down to our core, Captain." And it was so fun. I definitely want to pick up more John Scalzi because this just worked for me on so many levels. If you want funny and you like satire, I think you would probably love it. There's even a little bit of Star Wars, Star Trek adversary stuff in here, which just felt like a cool nod to the fandom people. So, oh my gosh, that was so good. So, that was all I read in the second half of the month. It was quite a bit, actually. But what have you been reading? Did you have any awesome books? Have you read any other John Scalzi books? Because if you want to recommend them, let me know. Have a chat in the comments down below with me. Thanks for joining. Bye.